So the defense in depth model, certainly it's pretty obvious by now that I'm a huge fan. I seem to really find a lot of ways to use it, a lot of different things I can do with it. And as a thought process, as a thought experiment, a way to consider security in a big holistic way, there's really nothing better. So what I'd like to do is go through how I use the defense in depth model, what I consider, how I actually get this model working for me. And the defense in depth model here is actually, I mean, it's a huge thing physically. I tend to like to either print it out or look at it on screen, something like that. Here, I have the luxury of being able to write directly on it on the screen. But at the same time, this works just as well on an envelope or a notepad or something like that. And the cool part of this is, as I'm looking at the defense in depth model, if I'm considering a security problem or even a security solution, I'll tend to just go through and remind myself, okay, what kind of protection do I see at the data layer? Do I need security at the data layer? What kind of security do I need at the application layer? Do I need security at the application layer? What kind of security do I need on the network side? Are there differences between the 3 different types of networks in the defense in depth model? And first of all, is the security there? And second of all, do I actually need security? More security, less security, no security, awesome security, all of that stuff, keeping in mind that these all play together. And what I'll tend to first do is look at maybe an existing solution and start making marks. Like, yeah, okay, for that particular solution, I'll talk about data model or some secure files on a laptop computer. Yeah, okay, so the data is encrypted, so I'll put a check mark here next to data. The application is trustworthy. I've checked it out and made sure it does the proper kind of encryption, so I'll put a check mark here. I've got some host protection, absolutely. I've got really good drive encryption or data protection at a holistic host way. Great, those are all in place. Then I'll consider the network. Not great network security. This particular host might be on untrusted networks, frequently has to communicate in the clear. So all of these, I would actually put either a question mark or an X, as no, probably doesn't actually have any protection there. And then I'll look at the physical. Well, this particular host might be in insecure areas sometimes, but we think that for the most part it's not exposed to heavy physical threat. So I'll put a question mark there, pretty solid, I'm not quite sure, maybe. Yeah, I'll put maybe. And then finally, stewardship, yes. For this particular asset, for this data on this host, I've got fairly well-trained folks using it. The people that are using it have gone through security training, understand the threats and the risks, understand how to manage their system. So sure, I've got security here at the stewardship level. And then just based on that, 1 minute, minute and a half kind of thought process and looking at it, I am not necessarily saying that these are a problem, the ones with the X's, or I'm not necessarily saying the blue ones are something I need to consider. What I'm looking at is, does all of this together, the strengths to weaknesses, the controls, the lack of controls, does what that equals out to, does that make the asset I'm trying to protect secure enough against known threats or not? Right? So think about that. Does this control, these sets of controls that are strong, give me enough security to A, outweigh the weaknesses or the downsides? If it does, I'm done. I don't need to do anything else. There's no further controls, no further changes that need to be made. If I don't have enough security, great. I know where I could potentially add or tweak or hone security. If I have too much security on, too many controls, too much lockdown on an asset based on this, great. I know where they can come off. I'm not going to untrain people. I'm not going to smack somebody in the head with a ball-peen hammer and make them forget how to lock their laptop when they're traveling. But I might do things like, okay, next time this host comes up for data protection renewal, I'll not implement that, or I'll implement it a different way, a less expensive way. That kind of thing. Lets me balance all of that stuff out. The most important thing you can actually do with the defense in depth model, though, is use it wisely. make sure that you think about the controls, look at the controls holistically, and not just assume that a red X is a bad thing, or a downside or a weakness is a bad thing. And not just assume that a check mark next to one of these layers means it's perfect, or it's awesome, or it's going to control everything that, so that I don't need controls at any other layer. Got to think of all of them at the same time, based on the threats, based on the risks, and based on the assets we're trying to protect. And I think largely the best way to actually look at that, to explain that and show how that works, is to look at it in scenario models. Different kinds of computers, different kinds of users, different kinds of information or assets that are being protected or may need or may not need to be protected, and then going through each of those quick and dirty with the defense in depth model to see what we can do.